morning, sun. How are you? Skies above. Gee, it's great to be alive and love. Good, good, good morning, sun. Good, good, good morning. Good, good morning. Good morning, sun. How are you? Skies above. Gee, it's great to be alive and love. Good, good, good morning, sun. Good morning, life. Good morning, sun. How are you? Skies above. Gee, it's great to be alive and love. Good, good morning, sun. Good, good morning, sun. Good morning, life. Good morning, sun. How are you? Skies above. Gee, it's great to be alive and in love. Good, 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 good morning, sun.
And good morning or good evening. I'm drinking coffee, but those in Europe, cheers, Friday evening. And once again, a live streaming glitch. But if you noticed it, good eye. If you didn't notice it, that's excellent. Okay, so where am I? So I was working on something related to Business Central, and I realized that I did not know the different item types available in Business Central. And this may not sound like an exciting topic, and it may not be, but it is one of those things that you kind of need to know. It's pretty fundamental. Like, are you talking about an inventory item or a non inventory item? And excuse me. And if you're talking about a non inventory item, are there different types of non inventory items? And I'll kind of explain why this is relevant and why I need to relearn this when coming to Business Central. So, with that, so I'm used to working with Dynamics GP, of course, and in Dynamics GP, there were a handful of item types, as it called them. Sales inventory, discontinued kit, miscellaneous charges, services, and flat fees. So from my background, it's like, there's inventory, but then there's just other stuff, and there's several types of other things that you could have, and you kind of need to know what those classifications are. And so in this case, sales inventory is your typical inventory with quantities valuation. Then there's discontinued, and that distinction was that, okay, it's a sales inventory item, but you can delete the item when the quantity goes to zero. So I had a customer that sold wine, and they had hundreds and hundreds of bottles and types of wine, different vineyards, different labels, different vintages. So it was actually kind of a nightmare. So they would accumulate thousands and thousands of items, many of which they would never sell again. So that's an example of why you might want to use discontinued items, for instance. Miscellaneous charges. It's like, okay, why is this an item type? Okay, well, maybe we want to have activation fees, termination fees, something like that. They use examples like freight expense. Basically, you want these as line items on an invoice, for example. Then there's kits. And this isn't a BOM or a bill of materials. It was kind of like my impression, I think I only used it once, was it's kind of a lightweight way to assemble multiple items into a single item, so that represents a kit, and you don't have to deal with bill of materials or assemblies or things like that. So that's kind of I think, where that came from. And then there's services, which is, oops, okay, don't go crazy on me here. Then there's services, which are, you have costs, but you're not tracking quantities. Like, okay, that's what I would consider a non-inventory item. But you can sell them as part of a kit. So let's say assembly is required. You could sell those services if you're going to sell, a audio video system with installation services, for instance. And then kind of an odd one, flat fees. Not sure how that's different from miscellaneous charges. So I'd say they're probably more than necessary in Dynamics GP, but probably a lot of history to why those exist. Okay, so that's my background. It's like, okay, there are potential different item types. I need to know what those are. Now, fortunately, Business Central item types are pretty simple. If we get inventory, non-inventory, and then service. So what is the distinction here? Inventory, physical unit, quantities, presumably, that you are selling. Non-inventory is a physical, interesting, this is a little different for me. Non-inventory is a physical unit, such as a bolt, for limited business support, for instance, because the item is only used internally and has a low cost. That's interesting. So I had a customer, they essentially distributed and maintained washing machines and washers and dryers, clothes washers, dryers, things like that. They had like 200,000 of these things they were maintaining. It was crazy. And they had a full service and support team, and they would have hundreds of thousands of parts in stock. And we were wondering, like, how do we deal with a bag of 1,000 little tiny screws? We don't want to inventory them like by individually by quantity, but we kind of need to know that these are in stock. We're not selling them. We don't care about the price, but we kind of need to keep track of how many we have and if we need to replenish, that type of thing. So that's kind of what the non-inventory reminds me of. And then we have service, a labor time unit, such as a consultancy hour for limited business support. So I would say like assembly, installation, a service call, something like that. Maybe that applies there. So this is a little different for me. Inventory, non-inventory, and service. Now, the inventory type involves full tracking of inventory quantity and value. Therefore, all item transaction types are supported. All items of type inventory can be used with all item handling features. And I don't yet know what all those item handling features are, but it's like a physical thing, warehouse shelves, perhaps bins, serialization, lot control, things like that. The service and non-inventory types do not involve tracking of inventory quantity and value. Okay, and value is a pretty important word there. Therefore, only selected item transaction types and features are supported. Cool. So if we go to Studio 4 here, and I'm pulling up this web page that I screenshotted there, and there is this table. So the 3 item types supporting the following features respectively. So we have inventory, non-inventory, and service, and it shows you where each item can be used or what is supported or not. So for instance, non-inventory items can be included for service consumption. That's kind of like my washer and dryer and screws and nuts and bolts example. Now, it cannot be used in an assembly output. It cannot be used for production output, which is interesting. Location transfer, no. Physical counting, no. Revaluation, no. It's not valued, okay. Can't be reserved, can't be used in warehousing and planning. Okay, so the non-inventory and service, those kind of can't be reserved because there's no quantity there. So interesting, pretty straightforward, not like rocket science here, but just something to keep in mind. Now, what is different between non-inventory and service is non-inventory can have assembly consumption, can have production consumption. Those are the only, oh, and service consumption on non-inventory items. So service consumption, assembly consumption, production consumptions. That makes sense. So if you're assembling, an item and you need 18 screws to put the table together, you can include that. So that's pretty cool. Okay, nice. I kind of like the simplicity of the 3 item types. Okay, so going back to, so those are our Business Central item types. We only have 3. Well, what about this thing called catalog items? If we go back to here, on this page about item types, I think it's on this page, you have catalog and service items. And Jeremy Viska actually mentioned this to me a while back, explaining this feature to me. And it's very cool if you have if you are a customer or if you are a consultant and have customers who have this need. You may have heard the concept of product catalogs. So in the US, there are companies like Grainger that offer all sorts of just thousands and thousands of items, from pipes to screws to shelves to, work materials, gloves, electronic components, all sorts of industrial and manufacturing related items. And there are so many, and maybe you want to resell those or you want to consume those. And so a customer will say, okay, I've got this, 50 gigabyte or, 500 megabyte text file with thousands of items. How do I import that into my ERP system in case I want to order or use them? Well, that's not a great idea, because then you'll have 500,000 items that will be clogging up your inventory and you may never want them. Or you may never use them. So catalog, my understanding is these catalog items, kind of cool. You can essentially import your vendor catalogs into Business Central and have those items kind of available for you should you ever want them. So you've got the vendor item number, you've got the specs, you've got the description, but it's not clogging up your main inventory in Business Central. So items that you offer to your customers but you don't want to manage in your system until you start selling them can be set up as catalog items. They're not to be mistaken with regular items of type non-inventory. So very cool. So once you use or choose to use those catalog items, then you can bring them in as a real item, and then it becomes part of your inventory. So very neat feature. So I think that's pretty cool. So Business Central catalog items, you cannot select a catalog item from the sales invoice page. You can select it from a quote page, but the catalog item will not be converted to normal item when you use the make order function. Typically has the same item number of the vendor who supplies it. If you want to convert to a normal item card, you must first set up how vendor item numbering is converted for your own internal item numbering. So really neat feature, makes a lot of sense. If your business or your customers' businesses, you import those catalogs. And let's see, on the purchasing side, many purchasing systems, procurement systems, they will have, say, Staples or Office Supply catalogs that you can use without clogging up your ERP system. So this is similar on the sales side. So kind of neat. Next up, we have Business Central service items. And if we go back a few, this was this third item, a labor time unit such as consultancy hour for limited business support. It's kind of a vague phrase, don't know what that means, but let's see here. So Business Central service items. So customers' items that you perform service on, such as a printer, are called service items. Interesting. So previously they talked about a consultancy hour, but now they're talking about a printer that you would service. Service items have nothing to do with regular or catalog items. However, service components can be regular items. So you're not going to figure this out from this help page, but you have service item components. Yeah, so that's going to require a little more research to see exactly what that is. I mean, based on this description, a service item is a labor type unit, a service item type, excuse me. Maybe there's a distinction between a service item type and a service item. But here, this is a little different. So, okay, so I think I need to look into service items a little more. Let's poke around and see here. So, set up service items. Now, this is a service item versus an item type of service. Seems like there's a difference here. Okay. Create service item. The term service item, so it looks like there is a difference, refers to the equipment or items that require service, different than a service item type. Very interesting. So service item is under service management. Interesting. Okay. Whereas the service item type is a labor unit, labor time unit. So if we go over here, let's go to items in Business Central, and we see inventory, inventory, inventory. So let's add a new item, and let's call it a service item. This is the template at least. Okay. Close this. So here I have, so let's say this is installation furniture. Service, hour. Let's skip that. Okay, so now let me just save that. So now we have installation of furniture. This is a service item type. There is no quantity. Hour, unit cost. Let me see if I can put in a unit cost here. Prices, unit price. Let's say it is 80 doll hairs per hour. And there we go. Whoop. Oh, that's unit cost. Okay, there's our unit price. Okay, so that is an item of type service, not to be confused with a service item, which I will skip for now. Okay, so that's our base service type. Interesting. Next, kind of further down the road here, we have Business Central assembly bombs, or I guess assemblies. And so these can be used for making end items from components in a simple process that can be performed by one or more basic resources. So I kind of equate this to, it's similar kind of to the Business Central, the Dynamics GP kit. So if I have a, let's say, what's a kit? So maybe we have the appliance and batteries and cord, whatever, and those come together for a kit. Or maybe we have a desk, a chair, a lamp. That's a office setup kit. And so here in this example, we have the conference table. One of those, we have 6 swivel chairs, and we have installation of 1 hour. And those 3 items, 2 of those are inventory items. One is a resource named Linda, interestingly. Those 3 items come together for a conference bundle that is an assembly bomb. So, okay, kind of cool. And that is not to be confused with a production bomb, which I looked up, I saw referenced, but apparently that involves, like, say, workstations, multiple tasks, things like that. Assembly bomb is just simple, saying, okay, here's the stuff, here's the resource to put it together, and kind of you can infer what needs to be done. So that would kind of be the next type of item. And let's see. Any more information here? So this is a bill of materials, and to structure parent items that must be assembled or produced by resources or machine. An assembly BOM can be used to sell a parent item as a kit consisting of components. So it reminds me of the Dynamics GP kit item. It's just kind of a group of items that you sell as a group rather than having to list them individually on an invoice. So there's assembly BOMs, and then there are production BOMs. And production BOMs look like they're a little more involved. So anyway, this was just an exploration where something seemingly simple sounding like item type that you might take for granted, I wanted to just drill into, make sure I kind of understood the terms, the different types, the lay of the land, and that I wasn't glossing over it, because I just kind of assumed there's inventory and non-inventory, and I forgot about the distinction between non-inventory and service. I didn't look into the distinction of assembly BOM, things like that. So there are a few things to be aware of, and I need to adjust my terminology to use the Business Central terms now and not my assumptions around how things used to work with GP. So with that, that was kind of a simple topic for easing into the weekend. So I hope that was very exciting and energizing. So have a good Friday. Okay, talk to you later.
Good morning, sun.